banquet hall glittered under golden chandeliers, laughter echoing as glasses clinked. At the center of the noise sat a long, polished table, where young executives whispered and snickered, their eyes darting toward one man at the far end. He wasn't wearing a sharp suit. His shoes weren't polished leather. He was in faded work pants, a button-down too big for his frame, his hands rough from years of mopping floors. He was the janitor, yet tonight, against his will, he'd been pushed into a cruel joke. A dinner date arranged by people who thought mocking him was entertainment. But what happened next silenced the entire room. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Go on, sit there, Henry, one of the junior associates sneered, pulling out the chair at the candlelit table. Henry Walker, a 52-year-old janitor with graying hair and calloused hands, shifted uncomfortably. He didn't belong here among velvet drapes and glittering jewelry. He knew that. But tonight, the staff had tricked him, insisting he'd been invited to join the corporate dinner. The smirks on their faces told the real story. "Don't be shy, Henry," another added mockingly. "This is your big date." Across from him, a woman in her 40s, elegant in a midnight blue gown, raised an eyebrow. She hadn't expected this. Her name was Evelyn Carter. She wasn't just a guest, she was the CEO of the company's parent corporation. The employees thought they were humiliating the janitor. Instead, they had unknowingly seated him across from the most powerful person in the room. Henry fumbled with the napkin, his face flushing. I think there's been a mistake," he whispered, ready to leave. But Evelyn leaned forward, her voice calm and steady. "Mistake? No, Henry. Why don't you stay?" She smiled, not the sharp, fake smile of the others, but a warm one. "Let's have dinner." The room went silent. The laughter died in throats. Henry swallowed hard. "Ma'am." Then, before anyone could react, Evelyn leaned forward and kissed Henry's hand. A gesture of respect. A gesture that made every mocking voice fall into stunned silence. Henry froze. The room felt like it stopped breathing. The man they laughed at, the janitor they mocked, had just been honored by the CEO in front of them all. The silence that followed Evelyn's kiss on Henry's hand was heavy, suffocating even. You could hear the clink of a spoon against a wine glass in the far corner, but otherwise, the banquet hall was frozen. Henry's ears burned, his throat tight as though he'd swallowed fire. He gently pulled his hand back, eyes darting around at the gawking stares. "Ma'am, please, you don't have to do that," he murmured, his voice trembling with both gratitude and fear. Evelyn's smile never wavered. "No, Henry, I wanted to. Respect should be given where it's due." A ripple of murmurs spread across the table. The junior executives, those who had orchestrated this little humiliation, shifted in their seats, eyes wide with panic. Their plan had backfired spectacularly. One of them, a slick-haired man named Trevor, forced a laugh. "Come on, Evelyn, you're making too big a deal out of it. It was just a harmless joke." Evelyn's head snapped toward him, her eyes narrowing with sharp authority. "A joke?" Her tone cut through the room like a blade. "Humiliating a man who's worked here longer than most of you have been alive. That's your idea of humor?" Trevor swallowed, his bravado crumbling. "We didn't mean it that way." "Didn't you?" Evelyn pressed. "You wanted to laugh at him. You wanted to make him feel small. But let me tell you something, Trevor. She leaned forward, her voice low, but every word deliberate, echoing. The only small people here tonight are the ones who thought this was funny. The room buzzed with tension. No one dared meet Henry's eyes. Henry tried to stand. I really should go, he whispered, wishing to vanish, to slip away from the spotlight. His legs trembled under the weight of attention. But Evelyn, well, gasps. Red wine for the janitor? The executives glanced at each other, their faces pale. Henry lowered his eyes. Ma'am, I don't drink much, but thank you. You'll try it, Evelyn said kindly, her hand resting briefly on his arm. New experiences are meant to be shared. For a moment, Henry's chest swelled. All his life he had been invisible in rooms like this. Tonight, he felt like someone had finally opened a window to let him breathe. Across the table, the others fidgeted, guilt burning in their expressions. But guilt was not enough to undo years of cruelty. Henry had heard their whispers in hallways, their mocking laughter when they thought he couldn't hear. Old man with a mop, lifetime failure, too dumb to quit. Each word had left scars no one saw. And now, Evelyn, this woman who had no reason to care, was stitching those scars closed with dignity. Tell me, Henry, she asked softly as the food arrived, what kept you here all these years? Why this job? Henry stared down at the steaming dish placed before him. His throat tightened, but he forced the words out. My late wife, Linda. She had cancer. I needed steady money for treatments. Insurance didn't cover half of it. Nights, weekends, I worked them all. By the time she passed, my kids were still in school. I couldn't risk starting over. The table grew unbearably quiet. Even the clinking of glasses and forks from the other end of the hall seemed to fade. Henry's voice cracked. I always thought about leaving, trying for more. But when you're putting food in your kids' mouths, you don't think about dreams. You think about survival. Evelyn's eyes softened, moisture glistening in their corners. She reached over again, her hand warm against his. Henry, that's not survival. That's love. And love is never small. Trevor shifted uncomfortably, trying to salvage his pride. Well, I mean, sure, it's admirable, but come on. He's still just... Finish that sentence, Evelyn, confused. Ma'am, I don't understand. You will, she promised. At that moment, Evelyn lifted her glass of wine. To Henry Walker, she declared loudly, her voice echoing through the hall. A man who deserves every ounce of respect in this company. Dozens of heads turned from nearby tables. Glasses were reluctantly raised, though many of the executives' hands shook as they did. Some whispered furiously under their breath. Others avoided Henry's eyes altogether. But Evelyn clinked her glass firmly against his, smiling. To you. Henry's lips trembled. His eyes stung. In all his years, no one had ever toasted him. And as he sipped the wine with trembling hands, Henry realized something had changed. He wasn't just a janitor tonight. He wasn't a background shadow. He wasn't invisible. For the first time, Henry Walker stood tall inside, even while sitting at that table. But what none of them knew yet was that Evelyn wasn't done. Tonight was just the beginning. The toast echoed through the hall, and though the crowd reluctantly raised their glasses, the looks on the executives' faces said it all. They were humiliated. Their cruel joke had backfired in the most spectacular way. The janitor they laughed at was now the center of respect, praised by the CEO herself. But Evelyn wasn't finished. She set her glass down, her expression hardening. "I need to address something while we're all here," she said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of authority. "Tonight was supposed to be a celebration of this company's growth. Yet what I've seen is arrogance, immaturity, and cruelty toward one of the most loyal men in this building." Whispers exploded around the table. Trevor leaned toward one of his colleagues, his whisper sharp. "She's really going to sink us over a janitor?" But Evelyn heard him. She turned her gaze on him, eyes cold as steel. "Trevor, stand up." Trevor froze. His fork clattered against his plate. "Ma'am, stand," Evelyn repeated. The man stood reluctantly, his confidence gone. He looked like a boy caught cheating on a test. "You orchestrated this, didn't you?" Evelyn asked. Trevor stammered. "I—" turned to him, her expression softening. "I'm not doing this because of you, Henry. I'm doing this for you, and for every person in this building who thinks they're invisible. You deserve better." The kindness in her words nearly broke him. For years he had carried humiliation silently, swallowing his pride to put bread on the table. Now someone had finally spoken for him, loud enough for the whole world to hear. Dinner continued in tense silence. The executives picked at their food, too shaken to enjoy it. Evelyn, however, kept her attention on Henry, drawing him into conversation as though no one else existed. She asked about his children, grown now, both working in different states. Henry spoke of how he'd missed birthdays, graduations, and countless family dinners because he couldn't afford a day off. His voice cracked when he admitted he still carried guilt over it. Evelyn shook her head firmly. "Don't you dare carry guilt for loving your family the best way you could. That sacrifice is the definition of honor." Henry blinked back tears. He had waited years to hear words like that. When dessert was served, Evelyn stood once again. Her presence commanded silence. "Tonight has been an eye-opener, and it made me realize something. This company needs a new face for what it truly values. Hard work, loyalty, humility. Henry Walker embodies all of that." All eyes turned to the janitor, who nearly dropped his spoon in shock. "Wait, what?" Evelyn smiled. "Henry, I'd like you to take on a new role. Head of Facilities Management, with a full team reporting to you. It comes with a significant pay raise, benefits, and an office. No more mopping floors alone at midnight. You'll oversee operations." The room exploded in disbelief. "She's joking," one executive whispered. "This can't be real." Henry shook his head furiously. "Ma'am, I don't have the education for that. I don't belong." "You belong more than anyone," Evelyn cut in. "You know this building better than any of them." His shoulder. "One more thing," she said. Henry looked at her, still stunned. "Yes, ma'am." She smiled warmly. "Don't call me ma'am anymore. Call me Evelyn. And tomorrow, when you walk into that building, you walk in with your head high, because you're not just the janitor anymore. You're part of leadership." Henry's throat tightened, words failing him. He nodded, eyes brimming with gratitude. "Thank you. I'll never forget this kindness." Evelyn's expression softened. "Kindness shouldn't be rare, Henry. But when it is, it's powerful enough to change everything." As Henry stepped out into the cool night air, the stars above shimmered brighter than he'd ever noticed before. He felt lighter, stronger, like decades of silence had finally been broken. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was Henry Walker, The man they tried to laugh at, but who walked away respected, valued, and seen. And somewhere deep down, he realized Evelyn hadn't just changed his life. She had reminded him of something he had forgotten long ago: his worth.